What's up, everybody? Matt Kajeski here, back again with the Odd Chopper channel. And today we are continuing our college football preview series talking about Notre Dame ahead of this upcoming season. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so when this and all other content goes live. We're also brought to you today by BetMGM. And if you've never heard of BetMGM, they have a phenomenal offer for you guys. You can get up to a $1,000 risk-free bet with the promo code OSCFB. And that is along with your first deposit. So again, up to $1,000 in a risk-free bet with your first deposit. You can either use that promo code OSCFB or click the link in the video description below to take advantage. All right, diving into this, we are going to talk all the odds for Notre Dame. This team's win total currently sits at 8.5. The over is juiced pretty heavily. It is minus 150 there. If you want to go under, it is plus 130. But let's talk roster, let's talk schedule, and then let's give you guys a bet at the end. Notre Dame is changing quarterbacks this year. They move on from Jack Cohn, and they just named Tyler Buchner their starting signal caller. He appeared in 10 games last year as a true freshman. He only completed 21 of 35 passes. He actually completed 8.5 yards per attempt, but 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Where he particularly excels is on the ground, and we saw him in some packages last year. He rushed 46 times for just a hyper-efficient 336 yards. That was incredibly solid for him. And if Tyler Buchner doesn't end up working out, they do have Drew Pine, who filled in a little bit for Jack Cohn due to injury last year. It's actually a pretty deep quarterback unit, albeit one that is maybe a little unproven at this point. And a lot of their season is going to ride on this unit overall, especially when you consider they just lost one of their premier play callers, Avery Davis. He tore his ACL last year during the season, and it looked like he was going to be ready for this year. And then, unfortunately, he just tore his other ACL last week during camp. So now you're looking at a receiving core that is a little bit lacking. The 3 starters are probably going to be Lorenzo Styles, Braden Lenzy, and Joe Wilkins. But even Joe Wilkins is coming back off a Lisfranc fracture he suffered this spring. Now, he is allegedly ahead of schedule on this, but you can see this gets thin pretty quick in the wide receiver room for Notre Dame. Deion Colsey's a guy that might have to step up. They might look at Toby and Merriweather, who's an incoming recruit, but it is thin at wide receiver, which doesn't help Buchner. From there, luckily, they do have elite tight end Michael Mayer back, and this could be an area where maybe they decide to go into more 12 personnel sets to ease the loss of Avery Davis. But outside of that, they do have Chris Tyree and Logan Diggs. These are going to be the replacements for Kyron Williams. They got a little bit of run last year, particularly in the bowl where Kyron Williams opted out. And then thankfully, their offensive line is going to be solid, which should be a unit to fall back on. They're going to return 4 starters, and these are all players that have pretty solid grades overall when you look at PFF, played really well last year. Jarrett Patterson at center was awesome. You have Josh Lugg. He's going to play guard alongside Andrew Kristovich. And then tackle is going to be Joe Alt. Probably the replacement there is going to be Blake Fisher, who will replace Cade Madden. Blake Fisher, he's a former 5-star recruit and somebody they can definitely look to fill that spot. He was their highest recruit in last year's class. And then on defense, this could be another unit they fall back on. 8 returning starters on a defense that finished 10th in the country last year. There's awesome players across the board here. Isaiah Foskey's awesome, J.D. Bertrand, Cam Hart, and they land Northwestern transfer Brandon Joseph at safety, who should bolster that back end unit. So overall, it's a pretty solid roster, and there's a lot riding on the quarterback in these receivers. But fortunately, if they don't pan out as much as we think, they do have a solid defense and a solid offensive line, so they could end up being a team that runs the ball and tries to control you with slow defensive play. But now let's dive into the schedule. It's a little harder than what we're used to for Notre Dame. They start off the year at Ohio State. That's definitely a doozy of a game. Then they go home to Marshall, home to Cal, away to North Carolina. They play BYU in Las Vegas. Shouldn't be an easy game. Stanford, UNLV, and Syracuse make up the easiest stretch of the schedule. Then they play versus Clemson. They go to Navy. They play Navy on a neutral location, then Boston College, and they close at USC. So diving into this, you have 3 really tough games first off. They're a double-digit underdog to Ohio State. Clemson, they're likely going to be an underdog as well, as long as their quarterback situation is remotely in place. And then USC. Those are 3 extremely difficult opponents. From there, you have some middling opponents that could scare you at times. Away at North Carolina, BYU and Las Vegas. Those aren't easy games. And from there, BC and teams like Syracuse, Stanford on the rise. So to me, the over-under and win total is probably a stay away. I understand why the overs juice so heavily. But even with that, you have 3 really tough games situated in there. My opinion on this matter is if Notre Dame eclipses this win total 8.5, that means they knocked off a USC, Ohio State, or a Clemson. And if they're knocking off one, they probably have a good chance at one or two of those, because that means their rosters actually coalesce and they're playing up to their capability, their recruiting capability. Buckner's playing well. The receivers have fallen into place. And if you get that, maybe you could just make the college football playoff, and that's plus 1,000, 10-1. Again, you have to lay pretty gnarly odds, minus 150 for the over at 8.5, which isn't something I particularly like. So if we're playing the what-if games, we know Notre Dame doesn't have a conference championship. They just need to win out their schedule to get there, and they have some really marquee wins. The other benefit here is you get Ohio State in week 1. So say they drop that game, and then they roll through the rest of their schedule, and they get 2 marquee wins against Clemson and USC. If things shake their way, a one-loss Notre Dame could be looking at the playoff here. So rather than bet their win total, which is not something I love, I'll take plus 1,000 to make the playoff. But that'll do it for us today. Let me know in the comment section where you think Notre Dame is strong, where they might be weak, and what you think of their win total as well as their odds to win the college football playoff. My name is Matt Gajewski on Twitter at Matt_Gajewski. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next time.